Hey everyone, it's Matt Donahue and Jason Defoe with Mission Financial Planners. Thank you for making time to join us today. Today we're going to talk about executive bonus plans and executive bonus planning issues. Um, we probably won't go more than 45 minutes or so, but this is something that, and I don't want to speak for Jason, but this is something that a lot of small to medium-sized businesses really do tend to struggle with. They have a really talented executive, someone who's really important to their business, and they got to figure out a way to keep them because without that person, it's going to really hurt the business. Um, and I'm sure Jason could give us, loads of examples of someone who lost that key person and then the business really struggled afterwards. I'll be your host for today. I'm Matt Donahue. Jason Defoe is our managing member here at Mission Financial Planners, who's really focused on advanced planning, tax planning, and business consulting. He's helped lots of business owners exit their business successfully. He's helped them structure their business so they can exit it successfully, all along the way working with their attorneys and their accounting professionals to make sure they've got the best possible plan in place that helps them protect their business, retain their employees, and get maximum dollar for when they sell. Um, in addition to that, Jason is married, lives here in San Antonio, and is the proud father of two four-legged dogs,
Yep,
Dobermans,
two of
two.
them.
Yeah. So I feel like I have two Dobermans sometimes, when I come home. So, but um, so without that, Jason, you want to say a few words to just introduce yourself? Hopefully, I didn't overstate anything. So,
Yeah, I think that was all great. Pretty on point. I'm just excited about the topic today because, the loss of a key person is a lot when you're trying to run a small business and you needed that person to make your business run, and now you have to go find a person while taking over those duties, and it just becomes overbearing to a degree for a lot
sure,
of small business owners that we work with. So let's get
sure.
into it.
Okay. Well, so what happens, right? And I'm sure Jason, you can elaborate on this. To me, the thing that really feels like because Jason and I have experienced this in our own work in our own business,
Mhm.
losing a key person. And to me, the real big issue was the disruption, which is that second bullet point, and then competition. Someone leaves. Oh my gosh, now I've got to manage all the work they were doing plus what I do, and then on top of that, they go join a competitor firm. Um, are they creating issues for your business when they do that? Um, but Jason, that's just my personal experience. What have you seen?
Yeah, I mean that's basically what I've seen. It typically has a fork in the road. The fork is either they want to be you and they go do it and try to take what you built from you, right? Or some of what you built from you, and or they go and get recruited by an upstream competitor, right? And then you're having to deal with replacing that person and not only the disruption of that person leaving, but also the training that has to go into the new person that comes in. Even if you hire someone that has the exact same skill set, well, they don't necessarily know how you are used to doing things.
Right.
And you have to go through that process of training that. And that is not a 1 day process.
Boy, that's the truth. Um, and that's something that, Jason, you and I experienced that, right? Someone leaves, it takes 3 to 6 months to really onboard the person. And then the other problem is we can't say it on a recording, but did you hire the right person?
Yeah,
Are they a jerk? Right? I mean, that for a lot of people, their personality really doesn't come out for the first 90 to 180 days because they're on their best behavior. It's kind of like dating, right? Like, you know, we all
exactly.
do things in front of our spouse after we've been married 15, 20 years that we would have never done on the first date, right? Ever, not in a million years, right? So can you live with it, right? We're not saying you have to
Yeah,
marry him. We're not saying you have to marry him, but can you live with it?
exactly.
So okay, so the solution, and we're always careful when we say solution because every business is different, right? And maybe a better way to say it is the solution we're talking about today is going to work for some business, might not work for others. But what you do is it essentially allows you to take a bonus, pay it to your key employees, And the reason you're doing that is you've already got an idea what they're going to spend the bonus on. Jason, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is the common theme of business owners that, they in their head they say, yes, I'm going to give this bonus. My employee's going to be super appreciative of me and they're going to, love me for it. And the reality is it's just another check that's coming to them and they're going to typically, this isn't all employees, but they're going to typically spend it and then come to the thought process that, well, I should get another bonus at the same time next year. It looks just like this. So, in which creates no connection to them. One of the biggest problems in business today is the challenge of retaining the employees because they'll leave for $1 an hour raise. They'll go they'll go down the street for $1 an hour raise, right? And leave your business and go to this new business because they can get just a fraction more than they're getting now. So what business owners are starting to think about is maybe giving them all the money up front isn't the best idea. Maybe I'd need to put something in a on a side that they can see, but they can't touch until they reach certain criteria. And then that keeps them locked in.
So, we joke about this, right, Jason? Like Quick Trip, the gas station down the road, right? Hiring assistant managers for 50 grand a year, right? That's not what we're talking about, but that's one of the things. So if you're a small business and you have that employee who's looking what exactly what Jason is saying for a couple bucks more an hour, maybe a little more flexibility, right? And the reason I brought up Quick Trip, 50 grand a year to be an assistant manager in a gas station, right? I mean, that's basically what that is. That's the challenge. Now think about your industry. Maybe you're in technology. Maybe you're in some kind of marketing or something like that. Doesn't matter what you're in, right? You have that executive who's making some good money with you. There's always someone chirping in their ear, always. And I'm not saying Quick Trip is where they're going to go, but the reason I bring that up is there's loads of opportunities out there if people are listening. The key to this is to keep them from listening. Why would I leave? I've got a great deal here. I've got a great long-term deal here. So, um, let me get here. Okay. So there's some deductibility here. And Jason, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think we've all, maybe a lot of people have experienced this, right? Oh, it's the life insurance sales guy he's got a life insurance solution for me, right? Is that what we're dealing with here, or is this a little more sophisticated than that?
It's slightly more sophisticated than that. I mean, you've got so with the bonus plan, typically what you're trying to accomplish is two things. You're trying to reward the key employee and give them something of value that maybe they can use to build upon. So like normally when we see these 162 section 162 plans, it's about, yes, there's a life insurance policy in play. There's two main reasons it's in play. One, because most of the employees haven't done that type of planning to make sure that their family is secure if something were to happen to them that's outside of their control. Drunk driver, I mean, you name it, we've seen it all from that
Mhm.
end. The second thing is the tax protections, because inside the insurance policy, it can grow, 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 and there's no report that goes to the IRS to say, hey, there's dividends, there's interest, there's capital gains, there's all this stuff going on. So there's nothing to report to be taxed on from that end. And for the employer, it gives them a tax deduction right away, right? They make the contribution, the employee gets uh, extra income reported on their W-2, and then typically most of the employers we see bonus that tax that they're going to pay. So if it was a $2,000 amount that was going to the insurance, they would bonus somewhere around 26, 2,700 to help pay for the tax that the employee would pay from that end. So that way it's a net neutral to the employee, and they have this benefit now that they didn't have before.
And I know one of the previous slides talked about it. If you're a small business and you're concerned about, discrimination, do I have to do this for everyone?
Good point. No, on this one, because it doesn't follow ERISA rules, it is totally discriminatory. If you have one key person or 10 key people, you only can do it, you can choose to do it only on them and set up the proper, basically, document that says, hey, I'm doing this for you through this company in this way at this amount, and here's what you're going to get, right? and it really cements it in to those people that there isn't an extra benefit that they're getting that no one else is getting.
So you've got your key person who's helping drive the business. You've got the person who works 30 hours a week at the front desk. You don't have to do this for the person working 30 hours a week at the front desk, right?
Right.
Not saying you're going to ignore that person or treat them poorly, of course. It's just you can reward the people who really drive your business without having to worry about, oh my gosh, I have to do this for everyone. Next slide's a little busy. It's a little bit about the mechanics, and I guess in a flow chart. Um, so it really starts here in the upper center with the business, right? They say, okay, we're going to have some we're going to bonus you, right? It's the tax deductible insurance premiums, essentially. Jason, with that, um, you usually want to put this in writing, right? Like,
Yes.
and for those of you who are interested, we have sample language that we can provide to you for you to take to your attorney. We are not providing legal advice by giving you those, okay? Those are specimen documents only. They are not legal documents. You want to take those to your attorney and have them draft it, okay? But you can at least take it to them and say, here's what I'm looking for, right? Ideally, you're going to go to them with us and say, here's what we're looking for, right? Because in many cases, the attorney doesn't know the whole story. And if we're or someone else is coaching you on this, you want to make sure you're bringing us along for that conversation because that can help provide some clarity for the attorney. So you've got a written agreement in place. Um, Depending on how your business is structured, Jason, do you need to have like a corporate resolution?
No, not necessarily. I mean, a written agreement, because you're going to put together this page or pages that say, hey, this is the agreement that we're making. And here's what our intent is to do that, right? And the key is intent. Everyone knows businesses have cycles, and some cycles are rougher than others. So the intent may get voided. So you don't get, most important part is that agreement being written correctly where you don't get locked into having to make that payment if things don't go right.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So you agree to do it. The employee's on board. You get an insurance company involved. Now, one thing I'll stress, you do have to go through, the employee has to go through underwriting with the insurance company, right? Because this is a life insurance contract that they're going into. And just keep in mind, when you go through life insurance underwriting, you're going to get one of three responses from the insurance company. Either the proposals that you saw, your employee saw, are exactly what's going to happen in year one. Alternatively, your employee might be in better health, which means their costs might go down. So now you have to make a decision. Do we keep the amount we're spending the same and boost the coverage because it's cheaper, you can get more coverage, or do we keep the amount we're spending the same and just lower the coverage amount? If you're doing this for a cash value play for income out of that policy and to take advantage of things like what Jason talked about with the tax deferral and all that, you might want to look at the second option there. Lower costs means more money to the cash value. The third option though might be that they say, hey, the employee's not in as good a health as you quoted, Mr. Agent, um, up to and including they're not even going to offer coverage. So the challenge becomes for everyone with that is you've got to make sure the employee understands this will require underwriting. We're not trying to scare anyone off. We're just trying to make sure people understand there is a process to that. But once you've got the offer from the insurance company, you've said, okay, yep, this is what we want to do. Okay, Jason, what happens after the coverage is in force? Now what happens?
But once the coverage is in force and you sign that agreement, right, we talked about from that end, then you as an employer you're going to make the premium payment to the insurer for the benefit of that employee. Now, the employee is going to own a contract. They're going to be the insured on the contract, and they're going to be, and their family is going to be the beneficiary of that contract, right? Most likely, whoever they decide is going to be the beneficiary, I should say. Um, from that end. So you're going to get an instant write-off for that premium that you're sending. Like I said, it's considered compensation for that part. So you're going to write it off as the business owner, and they're going to have to pay tax on that part. So it's going to show up on their W-2, and most likely, like I said, you're going to give them an extra amount of money to help pay some of that tax, and then they'll have that policy in their name, not part of your business, nothing that you can attach to from that end. So it is their contract to do what they want with.
So if they want to spend the money later on, they leave you, decide to cash out, whatever, you know, it's up to them. But I will say this, um, most insurance companies, with the way these types of policies are structured, you want to give it a good 10 to 15 years. This is not a short term pop, right? You want to let it grow for a good 10 to 15 years. And that's where you, as the business owner, when you're sitting down, when you're having this explained to the executive that you're doing this for, you absolutely want to pull us into that conversation. I mean, you absolutely want to pull us in because we can take you and them through it and say, hey, this is a long term solution here. That's part of the retention side of this is they're not just going to walk in 2 years because they hopefully they'll remember, oh, and if we're doing our job, we're reviewing it with them at least once a year as well, which just helps to reinforce it. Jason, before we get into some more slides, do you think it would make sense for me to show the specimen plan agreement? I've got
Yeah,
that
I think
pulled
that's a
up
good
if you
piece.
want to.
Yeah, not super complicated. I think that'd be great for people to see that.
All right, let me show that because that's one thing I've heard over the years. I'm sure you have too. People get nervous about that because they're like, what do you mean? Right?
Yeah, I'm
You
thinking
know,
it's super, it's 18 pages long and yeah,
yeah.
none of that's not a mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So again, this is a specimen, which means an example only. We are not practicing law here. We are not saying this is exactly how it should be done. You're going to want to work with an attorney who is licensed to practice law in your state to draft this. Um, but you can see here, it's very straightforward. Um, bonus plan agreement. Here's the compensation. It will be specified in there. Here is the conditions that get put in there. Who owns it? Okay. Termination. You can still participate if you're offering some kind of 401k or something like that, some kind of qualified plan. Your employee can still contribute to that if they're eligible. The insurance company, hey, they just have to do their job, which is maintain the policy, you know, and based on how the person's paying and how the policy's structured and all that. And then, you know, that's it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And like Jason said, it's not a mortgage, right? It's a 4 or 5 page agreement.
Yeah.
Um, how often should they review it? That's something I've been asked a few times over the years.
I mean, usually review it at least once every 3 to 5 years, or if
Hmm.
there's changes, right? Maybe that person has taken on more duties for you
Hmm.
and they're taking stuff off your plate and they've kind of committed to being a higher level key person than what you originally anticipated. So definitely, there's some review would be due then, um, or if performance has altered and you're not seeing what you thought you were buying with that bonus, then absolutely a review is necessary then.
So, question for you then. Let's say the business is doing great and it's doubled. Everything's doubled. Everybody's income is way up. The business is growing like crazy. Everybody's super happy. Um, the growth of the business and the compensation that person's earning might outgrow this eventually, right?
Oh yeah.
So what do you do then?
Then you have to come back to the agreement, right? We have to really look at total. Most business owners would do is look at total compensation that they're paying, right? How much of it is just base compensation? How much of it is bonus compensation? And from a percentage point, and how much of that bonus compensation is deferred, which is what we're trying to create here for that person. So you'd have to come back to it and reevaluate it, right? It might be time to step it up. It might be time to even transition it to a different type of executive compensation plan that we'll cover a little bit later.
Okay. Okay. All right. So Jason talked about this, the standard or the double. Basically, the standard is just the insurance company's paying the premiums. Mr. and Miss Executive, you have to deal with the tax consequences of that. The double is the idea where there's enough to cover the bonus plus the additional tax bill. So, um, but let's take a look at a quick breakdown for them. So this is just meant to be a
So Matt,
$2,000. Oh, sorry,
can we
Jason, go
can
ahead.
we change screens?
Oh, sorry. What are you seeing? Sorry.
I'm seeing a
Oh, I'm
PDF
on.
screen. There
Oh,
we go.
sorry. Let me
Yeah, no
let me get
worries.
let me get back to. Here we go. Here we go. Perfect. Okay. This is meant to be a basic example. You know, however many zeros apply to you, just
Mhm.
add them on, basically. Okay. Um, but the biggest thing I'd say here is the standard is at the top. It's pretty straightforward. It's $2,000 premium. The employee, it adds $480. Um, their cost essentially is $480 because they're paying taxes. And the employer's annual after-tax cost is only $1,580. No, it's not the full 2,000. And the reason it's not the full 2,000, Jason, is because they're getting the payroll tax deduction, right?
Yep.
Get into the double. Okay, the total bonus to the employee, it goes from 2,000 to 2,600. The 631.58 that you can see down here, that's the income tax. Annual premium now is 2,000. Thereafter, tax cost now goes down to zero. Your cost as the employer went up by about a third, right? Went from 1,580 up to 2,078. Folks, this, and Jason, I don't want to speak for you, of course, but this feels like a judgment call for you as the business owner because it's your relationship with that person. You really have a good understanding of the value they're providing your business. You understand how important they are to the long-term growth of your business. You know, you may look at it and think double is the way I want to go. You may look at it and think, nah, I'm doing standard because they may walk anyways, right? So,
Yeah.
you know. But Jason, what do you normally see when you do these?
A lot of times we see double because um, you're trying to make it an attractive thing that you're rewarding them for, right? So you don't want to have them have to come out of pocket for the tax part. So most of the time we will see employers do double so they can say, look what I'm doing for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All right. So from a tax standpoint, I'd say there's probably, what would you say, Jason? Breaking this down into three key points. One is there's a payroll tax deduction. Two is you as the employer, right? You're going to bear most of the cost for the employee because you're paying them, but you are getting the payroll tax deduction. So the second one is the employee is going to have some additional taxes, whether you're double bonusing them or not. The third is, though, by putting this in place for the employee, now you've created another tax deferred funding pool for them to prepare for retirement. You've also provided tax-free death benefits. And if there's any living benefits associated with that policy as well, you've also provided some potentially tax-free living benefits for them. Jason, what else would you add from a tax standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't forget this, which is hugely important. If they can stay consistent and they can understand the value of the benefit you're providing to them, you're also potentially providing a tax-free income for them in
Great
retirement if they
point.
were the main diligent with this.
Yeah, great point. Because you get someone at the right age and at the right income level, this can this can really turbocharge your tax-free income in retirement if it's done correctly. Okay, let's jump in now, Jason. Now, okay. Oh, before I get into, I get too excited. Okay, so if you're watching this, you just need to do four things. All right, that's all you got to do. Who should participate, and how much do you think you can afford to spend on this type of plan? Right? If you're not sure, talk to your accounting professional. Talk to us. We're happy to work through that with you. Second thing, what is the right insurance policy? And when I say policy, I mean policy type. This is going to be a permanent policy. Is it some kind of universal life policy? Is it some kind of whole life policy? Um, Jason, I don't know if you've seen this, but for me, most of them are going to gravitate towards the ones that build up a significant amount of what's called cash value in the policy later in life so that they can take full advantage of what you said is not just the tax deferral on that growth, but the tax-free nature of withdrawals from a life insurance policy as well.
Yeah,
Um, so, and then, okay, so you've done that. If you are going to implement, don't forget what we said. Step one is you got to go through underwriting. We got to see if we can get a good offer from an insurance company. And then step four is pretty simple. It's okay, we got to adjust their payroll, right? And again, you're not giving them a raise, you're paying them a bonus. So you know, that's it. Those are your four steps. Who should participate? Can you afford? Who should participate and can you afford? What can you afford? What's the right type of vehicle to use? Are they insurable? And okay, let's start making the payments once we know. That's it. That whole process shouldn't take more than 60 days. Short term, we showed you the specimen document for the executive bonus plan. You'll also want to make sure you understand what the options are. And then longer term, do an annual review with it, not just for the employee, but also for your business. Does this still make sense within the confines of your business? Because it might. But like we talked about, your business might grow dramatically. Your business might unfortunately do the other thing, right? And is this something that you're going to be able to continue to fund? You know, we need to review it every year to make sure it's still a good fit. Did I miss anything, Jason?
Nope, I think that covered everything. That was great.
Okay. All right. So we're about 25 minutes in. We're going to talk about a variation of it called a selective executive retirement plan. Some of you may have heard of this called a SERP, SERP. Um, and it's going to address a lot of the similar issues that we just talked about, which is keeping your key people and then, making sure you're able to do something for those key people without having to do it for everyone. We already touched on all the issues. Jason, do you want to talk about um, what it really means to be able to, and I know we touched on it earlier, but what does it really mean for the executive and for the business owner knowing that they can do this just for a few people?
Sure. I mean, where we see SERPs used the most is in typical corporations, C corporations for that part. Um, and for a lot of these executives now, when I mean executives, an example that we're given here, usually they're making, an executive type wage is 200, 300, 400, $500,000 a year. And the challenge for those executives is the law doesn't allow them to save as much for retirement as they need to. The 401k is going to cap. It's going to say, hey, you can only put 23,000, 31,000, whatever that number is on that year that you're working in, and your age is that factor. And that may only be 10% or less of the executive's gross compensation. Whereas the average Joe could be saving 20%, 15% of their gross compensation into their plan, which makes their retirement easier to manage because they're putting more of their asset away. So for the executive, typically the issue is, well, now I have to take all that money that I wanted to save in my 401k that I can't and pass it through the payroll tax and through the 1040 tax and pay my taxes on it. Then I get to invest after they've taken 24, 35% of the amount, right? Which is why C corps do these type of plans because they allow for deferral. So if I was making 500, $400,000 and I said, hey, I don't want 100,000 of that because I can live on 400,000 instead of five, then this allows them to defer that, not bring that into their tax
Oop.
return and pay those taxes. And for the company to say, okay, we'll set up the right provisions inside the company to deal with it, but we're going to pay it out to you at a later date.
So when people hear deferred comp, does this fit into that deferred comp under that deferred comp umbrella?
Definitely does. And it allows the employer to be selective. So you can discriminate. You don't have to give it to everybody like you do with a 401k. You can say, I'm only giving it to Bob Jones, and that's it.
Yeah, so if you want to sound cool at a pool party or a barbecue or a picnic or whatever, you can say, "Yeah, my employer did a deferred comp plan for me," right? And and,
Right.
and that might be at the high level. You as the key executive, that might be all that you really care about is like what Jason said. I'm making plenty of money now. I don't mind having some of my income carved off so that I can have that income later on. And I don't have to worry about being held back because we have 10 employees in the company, right? Or something like that. Um, okay, so I think we've hit that first point or the first paragraph here pretty hard, right? It's
hmm
discriminatory. You can only do it, you can do it for certain people. You don't have to do it for everyone. Can you talk a little bit about the non-qualified aspect of this and how, for the employee, what that means today, but also then what does it mean later on, the fact that it's not qualified?
Yeah. So the non-qualified aspect means typically in these arrangements, the employer is going to hold the funds. So I will not be giving them to you to hold like we did in the earlier example of the executive bonus, right? And they're going to have a promise to pay. And they're going to say, hey, this is our agreement, whatever that may be. Hey, I'm going to pay you $100,000 of this deferred comp. We're going to, over the course of 10 years or whatever time frame that works, the formula that works for the business and for the employee in that arrangement. And what that means to each of those parties too, though, is that it is a promise to pay. So there is a potential that the pay could not happen, right? An example would be the business goes bankrupt. Well, yes, you're in the lineup to get paid of the bankruptcy laws, but there's a potential that you could not get paid. which is why the IRS will allow you to exclude it from your income.
All right. So then it's non-qualified. Of course, the needs of the business could dictate future funding, essentially,
Mhm.
right? Um, we talked previously about the long-term aspect of it. Um, when we get into the retirement side, can you talk a little bit about um, not just from the insurance standpoint, but I know we've kind of hinted at the cash values and how you use them, that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of how that works? Because every time I've brought up Section 7702 to people, they're always surprised. They don't they,
Yeah,
they don't know that you can, create this income tax-free bucket of money by using insurance to do it. So can you talk through
definitely.
that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say that these SERPs or selective executive retirement plans are on the other side of the coin. Like we talked about before, how it was heavily slanted towards the employee has ownership.
Mhm.
This is the other side of that coin where the employer has the ownership, right? So really the idea behind it is quite basic. It says, hey, I'm going to commit a promise to pay. And like most businesses that have a promise to pay, they typically want to build a reserve to make that payment in the future. They don't want to just have a zero balance and say, "Yeah, I'll pay you, Matt. Don't worry about it. It'll be there at some future date," right? Because you that doesn't make the employee feel good. It doesn't make the employer feel good with that part. So what they'll do is they'll actually set up some corporate-owned life insurance. So the corporation actually owns the life insurance on the executive with the intent to make future payments to them, almost like a retirement supplement. So, if you're familiar with the concept of pensions, back in the day, our grandfathers used to get pensions from the companies they worked for, the manufacturers, Ford, auto line dealers, right? The government still does pensions from that end. You can almost think of it in the same classification as a private pension, just it has a limited time to pay. They're only going to pay for a limited time. They're going to say, hey, this is a 10-year, this is a 15-year, this is a 20-year. It's some time frame that was agreed upon in the beginning, and that's what the payment's going to be. The upside for the employer, and there's a lot of upsides for the employer, is all the money they're putting in there is tax sheltered because it's inside of an insurance policy. So even for an employer, all the gains and dividends and interest and everything else that happens in that policy does not show up on the tax return because it's sheltered through the insurance. The second thing is that when you stay the time, and I say, hey Matt, I need you to stay here through retirement. We consider retirement age 65, and you do it. Now they're going to be able to take that money out of that policy if they need to make the payments. So they're going to say, here's your $100,000 every year, every year, every year, for however long you guys agreed to over the course of that time. Well, when they do that, that's a tax deductible event for them when they make that payment to you, even though you're retired and you're no longer on their staff and workforce for that part. So, and for Matt or whoever in this case, that's money they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right. Right. So you mentioned I think something interesting about funding, right? Like they do want to put money aside to make sure they can fund it. Um, if I'm the if I'm the on the company side of this, how does that usually work?
As the owner of the company, is that what the
Yeah,
question is?
yeah, as the corporation, how does that
Yeah,
usually work for the corporation?
Yeah, so how it usually works with a corporation is the same process as we talked before. They'll identify the key employee. They'll have to get them underwritten to make sure that they can qualify. And the only difference that changes in this scenario is we change the company to the owner. There's a special form that the insured, which is the key executive, has to fill out
There you
to
go.
say, hey, I realize that the company is putting insurance on me and I'm A-OK with that from that end. And that basically satisfies some IRS things that have to be in there from that part. And then the company puts together the commitment, right? What are we committing to? Matt, if you stay here through 65, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for you, right? Or 1, 2, or whatever it is from that end. And then everybody agrees to that, and now you have the agreement in place. And now it's just you as the employer saying, in lieu of me taking it out of my cash flows 15 years from now when Matt's ready to retire, I'm going to go ahead and start funding a reserve right now with this corporate owned life insurance. So when he gets ready, I'm also ready. There's another key sticker to this too, though. Because it's corporate owned, there's a death benefit. Everyone dies. There's a death benefit that's going to happen. And depending on how the insurance was set up, meaning how you put together the death benefit, the premiums, and everything else, there could be a really good chance that the company could get back some, maybe even all of the premium they put into it and the payment that they had to make to the employee because of that death benefit.
So how do they structure it?
They
The death
usually
benefit.
structure, yeah, so they usually structure the death benefit based off of the commitment that they're agreeing to. So they look
Mhm.
at that commitment, see how big it is, right? And they think about that premium payment that they're making. And you kind of want the death benefit to be somewhere around that number that's within reason what you can handle from a cash flow standpoint, meaning how
Mhm.
much premium you're going to put in there, right? So if you can do that, then you can get it real close to zeroing out that death, which is basically refund the entire pool so you can do it again for somebody else.
So if I had, let's say, let's say I knew I was going to do 20,000 a year for 10 years for a key employee. So what I would do then is if it's a, and I'm just making this up, right? If I had $1 million policy that we were funding with that 20,000 a year for 10 years, what I would typically do is say, okay, 20% of that death benefit, about 200,000, is going to come back to the company. The other 800 will go to the family of the key executive. So I know our CFOs out there are going to ask, well, wait a second, Jason, what about the time value of money? Like if we can put money away now,
Mhm.
we don't have to put away the full 200. So really, should we be doing 150, or whatever the math works out to be? Um, how does that conversation usually go?
Absolutely like that. I mean, the CFOs of the world understand time value of money, and they want to make sure that they're getting their dollars worth
Mhm.
based off of that. So putting together that money, actually doing the calculation for the time value of money and getting back to the present value of what that looks like, right? And setting up the policy to do that. Most of the time, when you see the executive family benefit, it's really not necessarily there for when you're in retirement. Is there because you didn't make it to retire.
Yeah, I
So
gotcha.
you something happened, you died before you were supposed to, and now they don't want your family to be in a rough spot. So they have some provisions in there to say, look, let's go ahead and make that payment like if he was at retirement to get him through that course of promise that we committed to.
So along those lines, something that we've seen from insurance companies over the last 15 years is way, way more living benefits attached to some of these permanent policies. And just like three or four examples that come off the top of my head. One is something called a waiver of premium. The employee gets disabled. Premiums need to be paid for 90 days. Now the insurance company starts taking on the premiums. There's also things like accidental death, terminal illness, critical illness, long-term care benefits. There's all these different things that can be layered in. Do you typically see the company layering that stuff in as additional protection for all parties, or is it something where they're looking at, hey, you know what, you're getting a big death benefit, you're getting the potential for tax-free income in retirement. We're recouping our losses. We're going to keep the numbers right here. We're not going to pay for any additional riders if there's a charge to add that stuff.
Yeah, in a corporate owned world, we typically don't see like the long-term care and those type of things because they don't, if they wanted to set up a long-term care as a corporate owned, they would actually segment that off because that's totally discriminatory. They would
Yeah.
have a separate pooling for that to
Mm-hmm.
deal with that because I can do whoever I want in the company long-term care
Mm-hmm.
from that end. But in the world of corporate owned, what we typically see is the death benefit, and we do see a waiver of premium because if you were to become incapacitated and couldn't do your job, well, that would mean to me my company's losing money,
Yeah.
right? And I have to
Yeah.
replace you to make up that gap that just got unfilled. So they want that premium to continue to come in and complete the policy from that end because they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to go ahead and commit to the promise at the scheduled date from that end, or there's going to be hopefully, the employer has got some disability provisions in their benefits package, and they're going to be able to make the executive right with those provisions, and then they'll just maintain the policy until it's reached its maturity, which is the executive's death.
So with and folks, just in case you're curious, the way the waiver of premium typically works is you've got it. The company has a very short window. They're responsible for still making the premium payments. Then the insurance company takes over. Those will typically, those types of benefits will typically expire at 65. So like maybe I'm a 55-year-old executive. You're doing this for me to try to get me to stick around. You may add waiver of premium, but it's even if I work for the company for 15 more years and this plan keeps going beyond the first 10, usually those benefits just fall off the policy once you hit certain age limits. So if you're the person making the decision on this, it's something you want to consider in your thinking. Because like Jason said, you can protect the company's bottom line by adding it, but there might be a window on the back end of it where that waiver of premium no longer exists. So something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind. Okay. There's a host of features to the company here. Jason, if you were to pick the top two for a company, beyond employee retention, what would you say are the top two for the company?
I would say it's salary continuation because key executives love to know that when they leave, their salary, or at least in some way, shape, or form, maybe it's not 100% of the salary, some portion of the salary will continue for a stipulated period of time. Think about it. You're 65. I tell you, I'm going to continue to pay half of your salary for 10 years. Well, man, you were making $400,000 a year. Now you're making $200,000 for an additional 10 years, and you're not even showing up at work. That is a huge, yeah, I think I'm going to stay here a moment for an employee from that end. The second thing is really the business owner aspect of it, which is I can recover my costs. There's no employer that doesn't like the idea of, yes, I know I had to put out this cost, but I can recover it and I'm back to neutral again, even if it took time to do that, right? The fact that they can get back to neutral and do it again and again and again is very attractive.
Great, great. I think you hit one of the big ones for the executive, right? Salary continuation, right? Nobody doesn't want to hear that. What do you mean? I'm
Yeah,
going to keep making what I was making? That's
I don't
fantastic.
want that.
Sign
Right.
me up, right? I
Right.
mean, yeah, sign
Exactly.
me up. You need me to get on a treadmill for 60 days? I'll do it,
Exactly.
that kind of thing. Um, Beyond that, though, from a executive standpoint, and I don't want to sound super touchy-feely here, but that is a great way to get someone to be all in on the future of the company because they want to make sure it's funded just like you want to make sure it's funded because you want to keep them. They want to make sure it happens, right? Um, Beyond the fact that, it slaps on some of the golden handcuffs, right? Jason, what would you say the 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 long-term benefit is for the employee, especially as they're thinking about that transitional phase where they're going from working, being Mr. or Miss, I'm the mover and shaker, and now suddenly I have 60 hours a week to do whatever I want with because I've retired. What would you say it means for that person? Especially when they're maybe struggling through that transition a little bit.
I think it means two huge things for them. One, it means peace of mind because even while they're in the process of building it, meaning still working for the employer and trying to get to the golden retirement, right, from that end, it means peace of mind that they know when they stop, they're there's gonna be a check, right? The biggest problem people have with retirement is they have no idea where that check is gonna come from. I mean, they have some suggestive ideas. Hey, I'm going to take it from my investments. I'm going to take it from here, take it from there, right? But when you have a check just coming up in the mailbox, it's a huge difference for people's emotional state, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, the other part would be the planning. When you put this in place, you take a lot of that weight off their shoulders to do planning, right? This is not in place and you only have a 401k, you're behind the curve, buddy. You're not going to be able to live that same lifestyle unless you do some planning now at 40, 45, 35, right, as an executive, say, look, I need to start building up some money because the 401k is not going to get me through retirement.
All right. In the last couple slides here, I know there's a lot of information on this, and we could talk for quite a while about this. Um, Jason, before we get into the SERP checklist, top tax benefit for the employer, top tax benefit for the employee. What would you
Big
say?
tax benefit for the employee, right? They're
Mhm.
deferred. That means it doesn't show up on your W-2. Like before with the bonus, it showed up on your W-2. Doesn't show up on your W-2 here. Only shows up when you start consuming it, meaning taking your check from that end. For the employer, big benefit is insurance is tax deferred asset. Every penny that grows inside of there, the course of we're waiting for them to retire, is not going to show up on my tax return.
And along those lines, folks. So when you think about high level um, tax benefits for both, other benefits for both, right? The thing again is real similar to what you heard us talk about with the executive bonus plan. Who are you gonna do it for? What type of insurance product is going to help you do it? There does have to be notice and consent requirements. Okay, this is a little bit of a wrinkle here, but it's essentially that the employee is acknowledging that the employer is going to own the policy. That means you as the employer, you have the corporation has the ownership rights to the policy. They're in control of the policy, not the employee. Got to establish insurability, just like we talked about before, and then figure out how you're going to make the payments, right? So that's pretty straightforward. And very similarly, 60 days, 90 days, this can be in place. I mean, this moves pretty quickly, especially once underwriting's been or the person's gone through underwriting. In the short term, while you're going through underwriting, um, you're going to want to make sure you draft and execute it, a plan, and a corporate resolution authorizing the plan. We've got specimen documents for that as well. You would file a statement, and then, of course, reviewing the policies that they're issued, ensuring that you as the corporation are the owner and the beneficiary. Um, Longer term annual reviews, evaluate it with the needs of the company and evaluate it with, the key employee in terms of protecting your business. Is it still a valid agreement? Is it still going to be impactful to that employee? Um, so we went for 48 minutes, and which I thought was actually was a quick conversation actually. At least that's the way it felt to me. Jason, in closing, we have a lot of employers and employees out there that are very important employees and employers who are not entirely sure how to hang on to those people. We threw this information at you today. In August, we're going to have a different version of this where we're going to drill in even more on SERPs. But Jason, what would you say for someone who's watching this? What should they do?
I
Like
mean,
to
really,
get
they should
started.
just reach out to us and have the conversation, right? You know who your key employees are. You know what they bring to the table. You know what it would feel like if you lost them. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we need to do to retain them, how you set up the right compensation package that not only looks good on paper, but connects to that person's head. And they say, yeah, this is really good for me. And I do see the value in this. And I should stick around, regardless if the competitor wants to pay me a few bucks more or not.
Yeah, because money today, as you all saw from a tax standpoint, might not actually mean more money in your pocket. It might just mean more money to the government. And as one of our friends in the business likes to say, what's your favorite government agency? Because they're the ones who are going to get that money. Jason, as always, thank you for your time and your expertise. It's greatly appreciated. Like Jason said, if you do want to have a follow-up conversation about this, please reach out to us. We are happy to have that conversation. You can reach us here. You can see on the screen 888-339-0093. You can always email us at admin@mfplanners.com. We'll get this posted to YouTube. We'll send out some follow-ups for people as well, just in case they missed it. But thank you again, everyone, for your time. It doesn't look like we have any questions in the queue, so we'll go ahead and shut the room down. But thanks again, everyone. We really appreciate it, and we will see you all soon. Thanks again.
Thank you.